Welcome everyone to another episode of Masks Off. I am Kim Gross, and today I have Jamie Thurber with me, which Jamie has been here before, and we had such a great conversation together the last time that she was so happy to come back on again, and I'm really excited. So excited. But let me start first with the quote. And the quote for today is, honoring the space between. Very short, very simple, but yet so profound. So Jamie, what does that quote mean for you? How does that resonate for you?
It's really been a new guide, I guess you could say, lately, probably in the past couple of years, really. In a fast-paced world where we're so results driven, I think we don't realize, and sometimes upon reflection later we do, but we miss the part between the start or the action and the final item or the finish line or whatever you want to call it. And we don't realize it's all of the spots in the middle is really where I think a lot of the growth is done, a lot of the healing happens, the recognition, the realizations, there's so much beauty in the space between. So we can learn to still do the stuff because we're still going to do the stuff, but pay a lot of attention to the spots in the middle. That's where I've really found the magic lives. And so I think I've committed to not missing the magic part. So that quote helps my brain remember, okay, remember where you are. This isn't a race, not just
Yeah, such a great explanation. And also I think about another quote too. It's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah,
Which is
true.
another
Very,
one.
yeah, those
Yeah.
go well together for sure.
So thank you again for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Jamie Thurber, and I live near St. Louis, Missouri, and I have a coaching and consulting business. I've been helping online businesses for over 10 years now, and just working in small business for like 18, actually. And so I work with individuals from all walks of life and in different areas of business. And a lot of times the common denominator is people who want to be successful, and they also want to be happy, and they know there's got to be a better way to establish a consistent, sustainable in between stage there where they can do everything they need and want to do. So I have the honor of getting to help people with that, and most of which is through private coaching, and I do programs from time to time, but a lot of one-on-one coaching with clients, and even go on location with them from time to time. I'm working on writing a book. I don't know when that's going to be done, but I love writing, so that's exciting. And also have a passion for putting out thought-provoking content. So not only like inspiring, but just try to help people shift perspectives and be more I guess respectful maybe, or compassionate towards other people's humanness. Like that's something I'm very passionate about, and I enjoy using the social media and podcasts and things to share those things.
That's so beautiful. And you know what? It's so important because I think there are lots of people out there who do want to start and grow businesses, and at the same time wanting balance to still like be, right? I always talk about how to be a human being and not a human doing, and to find that balance between how do I grow a business and be successful, but how do I still maintain myself? How do I not lose myself? Because so many people in life can be so attached to outcomes and be outcome driven. And that's our conversation. So are you ready to take off your mask and be vulnerable?
Yes, of course.
All right, let's do it. Let's take off our masks. So we thought about having this conversation and talking about some places where, people may not normally want to go. And so before I press record, I was asking you, like, what's up in your life? What's new? And so we started to talk and we found a couple of things, and we can, you were telling me, let's start with how you recently lost your dog, which again, I'm so sorry for your loss. And that it has been a journey for you to go through the grieving process. But you also shared that you have another feeling that is going alongside the grieving process after losing your dog, which may not necessarily be something that most people would admit to. So that's why we're taking off our masks, because we're being freaking honest, like we're being real with what's really going on inside of us. So do you want to share with everyone what you shared with me about that process?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're very complicated, complex people. All of us
Yes.
are, and somewhere along the lines, we were told to try to be like one dimensional, and it's just not true. And um, I realized, so I had a coach for many years tell me, you are going to have to learn to dance with grief. And I'm going, I don't know. I'm okay. I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, oh, you will though. And you have to just embrace it because it's such a big part. We don't realize that we don't give ourselves space, even for small things, to grieve a loss of something or a change or whatever. And I actually lost two babies, two dogs, 4 months apart. One had cancer and one was out of the blue. I mean, she was old, but she was running around that morning, like acting like her normal self. So with both of them, I've felt both of these feelings, and I'm super grateful for having a partner that is willing to have these kinds of conversations, and we can say those things to each other and go, okay, it's a very human thing. But so Mac, my pit bull, he had cancer, he had bone cancer. And we ended up having to get his leg amputated, and then he was great and running around like a crazy man. And then he went through chemo. And just in general, though, he was a complicated dog. He was demanding of your attention. Like if he was in here right now, he would be crying. If you ever watch any of my videos, you'll hear him. He shows up, he paws, like he's like, hello, it's my world. Why are you not talking to me? And he was like that. He was the best, but he was like a little person, stuck in a dog's body. And so then, of course, I basically took all of my time, and I'm grateful with my business I could do that, to take care of him. And so when he left, I would have rather, in the grand scheme of things, I would have rather dealt with every crazy thing he demanded of me for his 8 years on this planet than not have him. But there was the adjustment of not only grieving his loss and him not being here, but also making sure I wasn't being hard on myself or letting myself feel guilty for also having relief, because things got easier, and Bonnie, my 14-year-old, that was fine. And then she died in my car on the way to the emergency clinic. That one I can't talk about very much still, because I'll just start bawling. But
Yeah.
she was hilarious. I mean, I had her for 14 years, and she was like the simplest, easiest dog, except for she would pee in the house. If you didn't catch her, she didn't care, she'd pee. Like if you didn't pay attention. So it was just constantly cleaning up, and paying extra attention. And so again, you don't even realize that until they're gone. And so then you're sitting in this weird place of, wow, I don't have to care for them and have the extra whatever things are to do. And I'm missing them at the same time. And so it's trying to let that all exist, because it's okay on both levels. That I think is really hard. And I think people go through this with family members, human family members too, And so it's rough. You don't want, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, that's the
There's
thing.
nothing wrong with it.
Yes, and I think that, and maybe I'm making an incorrect generalization when I say this. Maybe I'm projecting my own shit onto this conversation, because I have worn the perfection mask so much in my life that it sounds almost horrible to say, And so you talked about your fur babies, but my babies, same thing. They're 23 and 20, and they have just recently launched within the last year. And I can 100% identify with what you're saying, which is like, I miss them like crazy when they're not here. I miss them. And then when they come back and visit, there's almost this like, because there's that added extra level of worry, work, whatever it is. There's just like, all right, I'm going to say it. I hate because they might watch this and listen. My kids might watch and listen. And it doesn't mean that I don't love them, but there is a certain level of ease in my life when they're on their own. And that's what you're saying, so it's both. But I think sometimes like people will think that that's a horrible thing to say. So instead of saying the truth and taking off our mask and you just saying that and me just saying that, we hide it. We keep it in. Maybe we say it to one friend, or you might say it to your partner or whatever, but we don't say that because it would make people might think that we're saying something awful. Yeah. Would you agree?
100%. I think we live a lot in a world of if, like, it's one, this or that, right? Yeah. This or that. We can't be both. And I don't know why or where that comes from, but you can be a loving, caring, dedicated mother and still be happy with not having to make sure everybody has their food every single day. And like all the things, there's nothing wrong with that. And just like, I can be willing to do absolutely anything for a family member or for my dogs and whatever. But then when, like, for example, my mom broke her leg just recently, and I've had to take her back and forth to the doctor because she wasn't relaying the messages of what he was saying and she couldn't drive. And do I want to take 3 days a month to take my mom to the doctor for the last 4.5 months? No, like, I don't want to do that, but I will willingly. And then it's not like it's a burden. Yeah. But I think we live in this or that to where people say, well, if it's such a relief now that her leg is healed, then it must have been a burden when it wasn't. Well, no, I never felt that way at all. So why there's that weird catch-22, I think, that a lot of people's heads go to, which is why they wouldn't want to say that out loud, because they don't want anyone to think that they don't actually want to help or whatever it is.
Yeah. And you know what? And then that goes, if we take that to an even deeper level, like what's underneath that, right? So it's almost like so many of us in society are afraid of being judged, right? Which is why we don't end up saying how we honestly, and that's it, right? We don't end up being real or honest. And that's why I do masks off, because we end up not speaking our truth. Okay. So oh my God, now I'm like getting chills because it's like all coming up. So recently I've been sharing a lot that when I was little and growing up, that I didn't feel safe to share my truth with my mom or my family members, or the truth about my family. Because if I did say something that in any way, shape, or form would make my family or someone look bad, then I was bad. I was wrong for speaking up. And I wasn't necessarily, when I was a teenager and I was saying something to my mom about the truth of how I felt, it was my experience of what I was feeling, but I still wasn't allowed to do that. And that's how we are conditioned and taught to not speak up, because of the blaming, shaming, guilt. How dare you say that kind of thing? So there's even a layer and a flavor of that with what we're saying right here. Because underlying what we're saying is that there's a fear. Because if you were to, right, there's a fear. If you were to go and tell, and maybe you don't have it now, but there's a potential that the fear could be there. Let's just say that you did on your TikToks, on your social media, that you shared with the world. What if you came on and said, as like a hook, and maybe it wouldn't be this drastic, but something along the lines of, there's so much relief in not having to care for my puppies, or something along those lines. People will be like, what the fuck? Like,
Right.
you know, like,
You were just crying about it yesterday.
yeah,
Like, yeah, I know.
what's wrong with
I'm
you?
trying-
Right. So
I'm
there's
doing both.
there's the what's wrong with you thing, the judgment. So there's this fear. So we aren't honest. We aren't vulnerable. Right. So what do you
We're
think
not
about
even-
that?
Yeah, it made me think of the book, The Four Agreements, while you were saying that. And just
Mm.
how we have, there's two in particular, is don't take anything personally, right? Well, we do. Most people do, I should say. We're
Yeah.
brought up that way. Our parents are that way. Oh, well, if this person does this, then it must be because of me, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, even as much as saying, hey, you know what, I know I said I was going to come over today, but I have a horrible headache, or it was a really busy week, so I need to take some time for myself. I remember a place where I could not say that to someone because they would all flip out. Anybody would be so upset and be mad and take it personally
Yeah.
when it has absolutely nothing to do with them. And then we also have the other agreement I was thinking of, was the one about always do your best. And I think we're just as judgmental of ourselves as we are as of other people, which is a lot of times where that fear stems from. Like, we're judging ourselves just as much as someone else would in so many places, where, like, man, if we could all learn to give ourselves grace and other people grace in return, like, the things that we're stressing about when it comes to other humans would go away in such a big way, or it would diminish, so much.
It would, and you're 100% spot on, because when I was sharing earlier and saying about like me feeling that way about my kids, I could hear even the inner dialogue inside myself. Like, I'm judging myself on some level for feeling that way about my kids not being in the home. Like, I'm feeling like I shouldn't be enjoying my time and my space without them in it at times, so it's even, there is a layer of the self-judgment there. And thankfully though, because we're having the conversation, number one, but number two, like, I'm aware enough to know that that's a pattern. So then I know what to do next with that in order to go in and, like, okay, that's a childhood wound. I know how to go in and heal that so that I can come from a different space of having that grace for myself. Like, yeah, Kim, it's freaking normal that you would feel that way. You've raised these kids for 23 years. You've been a stay-at-home mom. Of course you're ready. It's natural. It's normal.
Yeah.
But,
well, because you're allowed to miss them and, like, enjoy your downtime at the same time.
yeah.
But it's complicated, right? That doesn't make sense to a lot of people. It doesn't match. And so you have to pick one. And it's like, but that's baloney anyway. Like, we don't actually pick one. The other one still exists. We just don't talk about it, which then makes it bigger.
Exactly. Oh, see that you're touching on something really huge, right? And Brene Brown talks often in her books that when you put shame in a petri dish, it just grows.
Oh, yeah.
So if we're feeling some shame about any of these thoughts or feelings, like if you didn't share with me now or share with your partner or anyone else that you're feeling some level of grief, that you now don't have that responsibility of taking care of the dogs, if you didn't share that and you just held it in thinking you were so wrong and you felt so much shame around feeling that way, you would just continue, it would grow, and you would continue to barrage yourself with more self-criticism.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It would start to eat me alive on the inside. And then I wouldn't actually be able to heal in grief because of that. I remember Tony and I were talking about it because he didn't expect to, Mac was like his best friend. He was so mad at me for making him have all these feelings for a dog again. And I'm like, sorry. And so he was very much more emotional than he expected, I think. And so for us to be able to come to each other and say that, and we both could just breathe a little deeper afterwards, like, yeah, that sucks. And don't get me wrong, I'd rather, take him back and forth to the vet every week forever if I had the option, like if he could be
Yeah.
well and have that. Um, don't get me wrong. I was waking up every 4 hours, give him medicine. I would do that forever if I, could keep him. But that's just not, again, the other thing I think is true about this is the relief part. That's just reality.
Yeah.
But then we're told that we shouldn't, oh no, but you shouldn't, because that's not, whatever, pretty or industry standard or whatever you want to call it. But that's just looking at like reality. It's a black and white answer, like
Right. It is reality. It is what it is. And that you use such a great word, you shouldn't, right? As soon as we use should or shouldn't, then that is a sure sign that it's like society conditioning us that we're supposed to be a certain way. We're supposed to think a certain way, believe a certain way. And when you don't align with that, then there's something wrong with you. Like that's why so many of us are so freaking messed up. That's why we all need these coaches, because we know like our true selves, we know, but we're taught that like, no, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you are is not okay. And I guess I want to even take that a step further and ask you a question, since you do have your mask off, because like I've just kind of picked up on a few things that you've shared in some of your social media that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to be the kind of person that you're like, no, fuck it, I'm going against the norm. Like you are outspoken, you are like just very matter of fact and sure of who you are. Is that true? Is that a true, accurate assessment
yeah.
that you're feeling? So, which is great because you are then able to go against the grain, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And I share it that way because I know a lot of people feel that way, and but they do it behind closed doors because there's just such a stigma of, well, who do you think you are? And why
Yeah.
do you should get to do it your own way? And well, that's great for you, but it would never work for me. I mean, these are all things that I've had to deal with and heal. I mean, I live in the Midwest way of thinking. And I have done things that most people here have no idea. They're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I believe that the universe or whatever brought me to Tony because he lived such a different life than me or anyone I knew. He was a professional hockey player. He traveled throughout his entire childhood playing hockey, and he got to experience life very differently. And so when I say some of these crazy ideas that I come up with, um, he's like, okay, and that's it. Like there's no, who do you think you are? Why would you? He's almost mad that I don't expand more, but we're getting there. But it's just, he's one of the few people often that I can talk to about those things because it really does make a lot of people uncomfortable, I think is what I'm really trying to get to. And even when I do share that online and there are people who follow me for that, it still makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. But my whole belief is that you lead by example, or you can shine and say, hey, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
scary, yeah, but it's okay.
And this is awesome. I love that we're talking about this now, because there is almost this sense of being too much, right? Have you felt that you've been too much for people? Yes, no?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
Like, don't be so big, Jamie. Don't shine so bright because it's too much for me. You're too, what, have you heard that a lot throughout your life?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Tone down, quiet down, don't say so much, you talk too much, your posts are too long, whatever. I'm like, well, my people read them, so it's all for you if you don't want to read it, but I have things to say, so here we go. But
Yeah.
I mean, everything from, I was the only woman in a male dominated business in automotive for a long time. So that was a thing. Luckily I had a boss who understood that I had like an advantage because of that. But I mean, even on social media, some of my what I at one point would deem best friends, would say, Jamie, you're trying to be taken professionally, and then you post a modeling picture online and you can't. And I'm like, who says you can't believe in your body and be sexy and be beautiful and be very smart and able to help people make millions of dollars? Like, I don't understand where the disconnect is. I
Yeah.
also was pretty lucky to grow up with parents that were very much like, be whatever you need to be. And I would be crazy and loud and a tomboy and then in a dress the next day and whatever. And they didn't bat an eye.
Yeah.
But as soon as the rest of the world, was involved. So
Yeah.
there's been ups and downs with that for sure. There's been times where I've hid for years and not realized I was doing it, or I toned myself down a lot. I think it's just something you have to keep catching because it is such a society thing.
Yeah, it totally is. And you're a target. It's almost like you're more of a target for judgment and criticism because you are shining so bright. So let me ask you this, and then maybe we can round it up with this. So let's say someone's listening to this who struggles to shine their light. They're more in a place of dimming. They don't feel comfortable shining and being bright and big and expansive and fully themselves, but want to be. What would you say would be the best way for them to do that, to start doing that? Like, what would be a couple of simple, easy first steps for them to start moving toward that?
I think finding a way to put yourself out there in brief little moments. And it's like, so I can just jump on a live stream and talk. I can start up a podcast mic and talk. I've also been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
When I first started videoing, live streams weren't a thing, right? So you had to like pop up your phone and take a video and then upload it to YouTube. And they were not good at first, But the thing that really helped me was when I first decided I was going all in and just really opening everything up to everyone for my business, especially Snapchat was brand new.
Oh,
It was before, Instagram and Facebook had stories, right? But same concept of the fact for some people who don't know. And, a Snapchat story stays up for 24 hours. That's it. People can't send it. They can't save it. They can't, it's up there for 24 hours and that's it. So I used that tool, the 24-hour window, because then like the perfectionist and the scary part of me wasn't so like trying to control it because it was just 24 hours.
oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Like, what's so bad about that? It's not like it's there forever. And so I do tell people that, like, if you want to get better at that, just let yourself flow. And in a place there, if you're looking for like kind of a safety, you can do it in that place to where it's not permanent. And so it's like a practice place. And I think the other big thing is paying attention to anyone who makes you feel uncomfortable for doing it. And just take it from someone who didn't make everyone go away early enough. If people are used to you being a certain way, anyone who's been around you, when you start to change, it makes other people very uncomfortable.
Totally.
So even if you're doing amazing things, if it's not the normal thing you're doing, it makes other people uncomfortable. And so just taking inventory regularly on what is making you feel like you shouldn't say the words or like you're wrong or, and just removing those people from your space as much as you can. And that doesn't mean you're having like an angry conversation. You just take a step away. Like one of my best friends, her husband had said to her the other day, I've been coaching them with some things. And he said, man, I just wish I could be as positive as Jamie. She's so positive all the time. And Kristen was like, I mean, yeah, but she's also real. But the reason that she's like that is because she's removed all the negative people from her life. And if something negative happens, she deals with it in the moment. And I was like, oh man, you're right. That is what I do. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, no,
that's a big part of it.
It truly is. I love that you said that. I actually do in my 5-step power pathway program during like the R of power, radical responsibility. one of the activities that I have people do is an 8, 9, 10s list. So not only do I have them do it with people, but also things in their life. So everybody that's in your life, write them down on a piece of paper and then rank them from 1 to 10. 10 is like, they are badasses, they're supportive, they're bringing so much value into your life. They're your cheerleaders, champions, they inspire. And then 1's being like the most toxic person you could have in your life. And then rank them, like literally rank them. And then get rid of the 1, 2s, and 3s for sure. Make sure you're keeping your 8, 9s, and 10s and being around them as often as possible. And then maybe like the 5, 6, and 7s, maybe like are certain family members, or maybe it's a boss, or maybe like they're not really pulling you down and they're not really toxic, but you kind of do just need to keep them in your life. Maybe there's some obligation, but you maybe set boundaries and you spend less time around those people. And that's kind of what you're saying. So that when you have those 8, 9s, and 10s and you're surrounded by those all the time, you're going to have more people cheering you on as you try to shine your light even brighter, right?
Yeah, I think the radical responsibility thing is important, like you said, because also, even if it's somebody that you really care about and that you really want to support you, some people really won't, right? Maybe they're a 5 and they're going to stay a 5 forever. So for
Yeah.
example, like my mom and I have a great relationship, and not that we always have, but there was a time where she did not understand
Mm.
what I was out here doing. And in so many things, but she loves me and she's understanding. And I have taken the time over the years to explain things to my parents about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and why it works and whatever. And also just telling them you're allowed to have your own opinion. But these are conversations no one's ever had with them.
Yeah.
So sometimes you do have the ability, and I think that's part of shining. I have a lighthouse tattoo on my arm.
See?
So it comes from this decision that, I mean, I think I've always done this even before I realized that I was doing it, but you can't force people to follow you. And so the whole lighthouse and tugboat concept is that you can jump into the water and try to save everyone all day, right? And try to pull them into harbor. And the likelihood is you're getting battered and beat up and bruised along the way.
Yep.
And you can't force someone to do something. They have to want to do it and want to change or want to believe see what you're doing and support you. But you can stand and shine and lead by example, and you can show people, safe passage into harbor, right? Without it beating you up, because if you let it beat you up, then you can't help. It's this catch-22 again. And so I remember hearing that for the first time from a coach and going, oh my God, you're right. Whoa, okay. And it just became such a big part of my purpose on this planet, I think, but I wish I would have thought of that earlier, right? Without realizing how much I was allowing other people's judgments to
Yeah.
keep me from being as much me as I wanted. And also the rule book, I think that's the other deal. Like whose measuring stick are you measuring yourself up against? Yours or some strangers? Like
Yeah. Well, and there's 2 things that I want to say to kind of like round it out. One is throughout the whole conversation, we've been speaking to the Teddy Roosevelt quote, which Brene Brown again uses about daring greatly. And again, the people that we are concerned about their judgment with are the ones that are the critics in the stands. They're not necessarily in the arena. So to your point, exactly. Like, are you really going to worry about someone who's sitting then in the stands and they're not in the arena themselves? They're not getting bloody. They're not getting sweaty. They're not getting dirty. They're not taking the risks, but yet they want to sit there and judge and criticize. Like, that's who you're going to worry about, kind of thing, right? Like, whose judgment are you going by? That's one thing. The other thing is that I have often heard I've often heard people talk about the light, shining the light, and then people will follow and things of that nature so many times. But I just want to say to you, like, thank you for sharing it from your perspective, because when you explained that the way you did, it resonated with me in such a deeper way than it ever has before. That whole visual of the boat, because I've often worn the mask of rescuer. I really can wear that mask big time. Like, I want to rescue and save the freaking world, from my family of origin to my kids to everyone, to even clients. I want to just give everyone free stuff. I don't want to pay, charge anyone for anything, because I just want to save everyone. But that visual of the tugboat, and all I could imagine was getting so freaking tired
Yeah.
trying to save people that way, rather than just be the lighthouse and just be the light. And I just wanted to thank you for sharing that whole visual, because it just hit me in such a deeper way than it ever has before.
Oh, good. Thank you. I love that. And because I do think it's so powerful. And I wanted to just note that sometimes the things that we're saying, some people, if you take it at a surface level, it may sound heartless or mean,
Yeah.
or how do you just not talk to someone? What I want to say is, the thing that's really helped me is finding a place of compassion for everyone, because I desire for people to have that for me, right?
Yep.
And because of that, I do, like, my dogs died and Mac had cancer, and I stopped talking to a lot of people because it just had no capacity for it. I took care of my clients, and that was that. But when the dogs died, my assistant told everyone, because I just couldn't have the conversation. So, like, anyone I do work with, and because I live in a world where I give compassion as much as I expect it, I believe that, the people I had surrounded myself with, no one batted an eye at giving me space to do what I needed to do. And what a beautiful relationship, to where, that was hard. Even though I've been practicing this for a long time, it was still very difficult to not feel like I was letting everyone down. But I think that's, again, an old story, right? That's an old story we're telling ourselves. If we want to talk about Brene Brown, she uses that to the story you're telling yourself.
Yep.
That most of the time, no one else would ever even think of you. Your critics are in your head telling you that. But I think compassion is a big thing. I think it's underrated, and people should talk a little bit more about it, to where, even for compassion for yourself, when you do jump into the water and try to save someone, and then you're like, damn, why did I do that? To the person who's like, how dare you say you're not going to help someone in the water? There's just compassion all the way around for where someone is in their own world and in their own journey. Really takes some of that heaviness that I think we normally just like throw in our backpack and walk around with. It releases some of that and does give you more space to be who you are. So yeah, compassion. I think that's a big piece. As I was thinking, some people are listening to this going, yeah, well, that's easier, because it is easier said than done. It is work, but compassion and being kind is really at the root of it all. And that's why I think that's why people are able to establish that. For me, it's been being compassionate and kind, because then I'm not alienating anyone or being horribly mean to somebody or whatever. None of that, because that all comes with its own list of other problems,
Totally. So it goes back into that like binary all or nothing thing. So
Yeah.
well, first of all, I could say that I could keep talking for another hour. I know we said this the last time that we were on together. Like, I really can just talk with you for a really long time. And I want to be mindful of people listening. And then normally I would say to any guest that I have on, like, do you have one takeaway or imparting piece of wisdom for the listeners? I think you just gave it about the compassion piece. And I think it's beautiful. Does that feel complete for you, or is there anything else that you would want to add as far as the takeaway from this conversation?
I think it's beautiful that actually came up, because the compassion and kindness to yourself as well as others, that goes all the way back to our beginning of our conversation with the very complex human emotions that we feel. On both sides, they're, all over the place sometimes. And if you can just have compassion for that within yourself and see it within others too, I mean, I think that's one of the most beautiful things we can adopt. It makes it actually makes your life easier.
Really does. It so does.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. You're amazing. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram. It's Jamie.Thurber on Instagram. Facebook, it's just Jamie Thurber. And then my website, it's jamiethurber.com. And I do have a beautiful new page that I love. It's jamiethurber.com/coaching is this really pretty page that describes a lot of the work I do.
Awesome.
But I'm all over those places all the time.
Okay, and I'll have all of that in the show notes as well. So thank you again for having another conversation with me today. I really appreciated it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. These are always fun. And like I said, I'll come back as many times as you want me to. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Masks Off. I'm Kim Gross. This is Jamie Thurber. And if you liked this conversation, which I'm sure you have, we would love if you commented, share a thought with us. And I would appreciate it and love it if you liked, subscribe. Thank you. Until next time, I will see you.